Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and this is the episode 17th of my course. In this episode, it is part 3 of our Firebase project, which is our last few videos for this course. But I'm really excited because in this video, we're going to make a lot of progress. And if you want to check out the code, just remember, all of that will be in the description. So with that in mind, let's get into the video. Okay, everyone. So we're going to continue right from the point where we left last time, which is we have our little project over here. We're able to create posts and they exist inside of our Firestore database, as you can see. But one thing that we don't have right now is the ability to display those posts somewhere in our project. And that's extremely important because what's the point of creating a post if you're not displaying it? So what we want to do is in our homepage over here, we want to have a list of posts being displayed, and they should only appear if you're logged in, right? We already did that in the previous episode by setting up some rules for Firestore. So over here, what we want to do is come to our code. You see my project is running. Everything is exactly how it was from the previous episode, but we want to come to our home page now, which is the main page over here. So in this page, we want to start writing out all the functionality related to getting the data. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I want to come over here at the top and I want to import some stuff. So first I want to import some stuff from Firebase/Firestore. So the Firestore package inside of Firebase. And what I want to get is I want to get a getDoc function. Now getDoc without an S means that you're getting one document from a database. In our case, we want to have a list of documents. We want to get all of the documents that exist in this database, right? To just display it. Similar to how Instagram would have a bunch of pictures, that's what we want. So instead of using the getDoc function, we're going to use the getDocs function, which means that it will get multiple documents. Then what we want to do is we want to have call the collection function, which if you recall from the previous episode, this function, its main purpose is to just define which collection you're going to be referenced to. So it creates what is known as a reference in React, and it is referring to the post function. So technically, what we can do is we can actually just copy this from this file and put it over here because we're going to be using it later on. So we're just making a reference to which document in our database we want to get the information from. So the posts one. So now it's given us an error because we still haven't imported the DB function, but that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to come over here and we want to import from our Firebase config function, which our file, which we have to go back twice, then go to config, then go to Firebase. And what we want to import is the DB thing, the DB value that we exported from there. So this is what is going to be used in this collection function. And now you can see there's no errors. We also need a state that is going to keep track of all of the data that we get back from this thing over here. So one thing that a lot of people are confused on because I taught React Query in this course is React Query is used when you don't have control of your backend in their frontend. In this case over here, we're using Firebase. Firebase is an exception. You don't have to fetch data like in normal terms using Firebase because Firebase provides you with a bunch of methods that can do that for you. So we're not using React Query in this project or any other type of fetching data because it's already done with the Firebase functions. And that's something that I wish I said in the first episode of this course, but I didn't, but now I'm saying it so you guys know. That's why we're not using React Query. And in this case, differently from React Query, we do have to create a state which is going to keep track of the data that we get back. So we're going to create this state, and I'm going to call it probably like a posts list, so a list of posts. And we're going to have a function called setPostsList, just like this. And inside of here, we're just going to set it to null initially because the data will obviously be null until we get it from Firebase. Then we're going to create this function, which is going to be called getPosts. So it's going to be a function that is going to be used to call and get the posts from our table or from our document, right? So then what we have to do is we need to make this asynchronous, because if you recall, all of the Firebase operations or Firestore operations, they require an await. So we need to make this function async. Then we need to create a variable called data, which is going to represent the data we get back from the getDocs function, and just set it equal to await getDocs, just like this. Not getDocs. So I'm going to delete this. It automatically imported. So inside of here, we just have to put one thing, which is the collection or the reference to the collection that we want, which in this case is the post refs. So when we do this over here, data will now be representing the data from our database. We can actually check this. I'm going to just say console.log data, and I'm going to call the getPosts function just simply like this, and we can check to see if this is working. Inspect element, go to console, and we see that in the midst of a bunch of stuff, there is this thing over here, right, which is being console logged, and it includes a bunch of things. Now, it is kind of confusing to analyze this whole object because Firebase returns object with a bunch of stuff. So to make it simpler, I'm going to show you guys how you destructure or how you dissect this data object to get the information that we actually want. So first of all, I'm going to say data.docs, just like this, and it will give us a list of the documents that we're getting back. Then I'm going to map through each of them, because each document doesn't have the actual data. It includes a bunch of stuff about it. So when we map through each of them, we're going to get each individual doc. And for each individual doc, I just want to have an object with the data from the doc, which we can get by saying doc.data. It's a function. And we can get the ID for that specific document by saying doc.id. So it's kind of confusing, I understand, but this is how this data object is returned. And if we want to just get a little object containing this information over here, just this four things, plus the ID, which is this over here, we have to destructure it this way. You'll see that now we get back an array, and each element in the array is an object containing the information that we need, which is amazing, right? Because it's exactly what we needed. So we can see we are getting back the data. That's perfect. But what are we doing with that data? Well, we need to set the post lists array to be equal to this whole statement over here. So literally all we have to do is just grab this over here and set post list to be equal to this. Now it's given us an error, and it says that it's not assignable to this. It is because we haven't specified our type in TypeScript. Now, if you recall, this whole thing will be an object containing the same format as we have over here. So we can define an interface over here at the top to represent that. And I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to call it interface, and I'm going to say post. This is an interface that is going to represent what a post looks like. And to define this post interface, all it has is an ID, which is a string. Then it has, and I'm going to just look over here to actually see because I forgot. It has a user ID, which is also going to be a string. So user ID, it's going to be a string. It has a title, which is going to be a string. Most of the stuff is just strings. It has a username, I believe, which is going to be a string. And yeah, actually everything is a string. And then a description, which is also a string. So description is also a string. And now that we defined what a post looks like, all we have to do is just say that our use state over here is of type post, just like this. Oh, but the error is still here because we defined initially that it can be null. And this is fine. It's just how we want to, like, we don't want it to be an empty post before the data arrives. We want it to be null just as a way for us to know when the data is here and when it's not. So what we can say is this state will either be null or a post. Now the error is still here, and the reason for why this error is still here is because this isn't a post. This is an array of posts. So we have to put the array symbol over here, and it is now an array of posts, which is exactly what we want. And since Firestore in itself doesn't know what will be included in this little data function over here, so it doesn't know the format of the data beforehand, it just knows that it has an ID because that's what we manually defined over here. We do have to cast this to be as a posts array, just like this. And this will basically say that this will have this format. That's what the as means. So in a lot of situations in TypeScript, if you're running into a problem where the thing doesn't really know how the data looks like, you can cast it to be this type, and it will all work out. So now we have this function, we have this state that has the data that we get back from the posts, right? So instead of just calling the function this way, what I want to do is I want to call the function once every time the component renders. And to do that, we need to use one of the hooks that I taught in this course, which is the useEffect hook. And this hook will be called once when we render or when we mount the component. If we put an empty, like an empty array over here. And inside of here, all we're going to do is call the getPosts function, just like this. And it should be actually running this function and setting the posts list to be equal to the data. Then what we want to do is we want to get the posts list and we want to loop through it. So we're going to come over here and say postList.map because we're going to loop through each of them. And we do have to put the question mark because while it's null, it's not going to show the data. It's not going to have anything. So we are not going to map through something that is null. And then inside of this, we're going to say for each post in this list, I want to return something, right? Now, what do we want to return? Well, we want to return some sort of like square in our screen that is going to show, it's giving us an error, but I want to return like a little square, which is going to show a title, a description, and the username for the user who created that post. So I want to create a separate component that is going to represent what a post should look like. And since that is going to be part of the main page, I don't think we should put it in the components folder because components folder is meant for components that are going to be reusable in a lot of different components and pages. This is just going to be used in the main page. So what I want to do is I want to create similar to the create post. I want to turn the main into a folder. So we're going to call it main and we're going to put the main.tsx inside of here. It's going to obviously ask us if we want to automatically update the imports. We're going to say yes. And it will fix all the errors because we used to be importing it from a different path, but now we're not. And inside of here, inside of the main folder, I want to create a post.tsx file. This is going to be a component that is going to represent an individual post. So we're going to say post equals to this, and then inside of here, we're just going to return a div for now. Now we're going to call this right over here. We're going to say post. It will automatically import a post from the file and we're just going to self-close it. So as you can see, what we're doing is we're just looping through the list and we don't even need to put this parentheses over here. We just have to return the post component. Oh, it's automatically putting it because of Prettier, which is an extension that I mentioned in the beginning. But at the same time, it is working. We're looping through this list and returning a post for each element in the list. Now, obviously, there's nothing in it right now. It's even giving us an error message. But if the error message ever appears, just like stop the server and run npm start again. But in this case, everything seems to be working, but it's not being displayed, which is fine. So what we want to do is we want to get the data from the post as props inside of this post thing. So whenever we need props inside of a component in TypeScript, we have to define how the props will look like by creating an interface called props, just like this. And in our case, all we want is a post, and a post should look like the post interface that we created over here. So I'm just going to say that this thing will have one element called post, and it will be of type posts. And I know this looks kind of weird, but it's exactly what we need. Now, the reason why it's giving us an error is because the interface post is not public. So we need to export it so that we can import it in our post file. So I'm just going to import this by saying import from main. And I want to import the post interface and just use it as part of our props, just like this. It is giving us an error, right? Because you can't have two things with the same name inside of a same file. So we're going to change the name of this to something else. And you can do that by whenever you import something, you can just say as and then give it a name. I'm going to say, for example, I want to call this iPost. And iPost just means interface post. It's just an alias I'm using just so I can bypass this error. And you can see that it is working now. And we have our interface for props. Now, how do we say that our props will look like this? Well, we just call props over here and set it to be equal to props, just like this. So now our component knows that it will receive a post as its data, right? So what we want to do is we're going to come over here and we want to destructure our props object and just get the post inside of it, because that's all we're going to use. Now, it is giving us an error in the main file because it is telling us that it needs a prop called post, but we're not passing it. So all we're going to do over here is just say post is equal to post because it is the post that we're mapping through. And now there's no errors because we are properly handling how our data should look like, and TypeScript knows what it needs. So now over here, let's start defining how our post will look like. So first of all, I want to have a little title. So I'm going to create a div for the title. And I'm going to give it a class name, but obviously I'm not going to add any CSS right now. But it's just for us to organize this. I'm going to call this the title div. And I'm going to add a little h1 tag inside of here that is going to represent the post.title, just like this. Then I want to have another div, which is going to be the body of our post. This body will just be where we add the description. So I'm going to say class name equals to body. And we're going to put over here a p tag to describe the post.description. Then right at the bottom, I want to add the footer for our post, because it's where we're going to add the author. So I'm going to add another div, give it a class name of footer. And then over here, we're just going to say we want probably a p tag. I'm going to say a p tag as well. And I'm going to say that we want to display the post.username for the username of the user who created that post. I also want to add a little @ symbol over here just because I find it cool. It will kind of look like the user has that username. And you'll see that if we come to our code, now it's displaying the posts like this. The title for the post, the description, and the username of the user who created the post. If I were to come over here and add a new thing, so I'm gonna create it with a different account just so we can test this out as well. I'm gonna go to login and then click on sign in with Google, and then I'm gonna choose this email over here, which is a different username, and you'll see that if I create a post over here, give it a title of do what excites, and then just write a description like do something nice every day. Random description, click submit, get redirected, and you'll see that now there's this post over here, which includes my username, my description, and the title, which is amazing. So bottom line, we are able to do all of the things that we wanted to do. I know it looks a little bit ugly, but don't worry. We're going to fix how it looks at the end of the video, where I'm going to do all the CSS, and you can just copy me if you're interested to. But as you can see, the website doesn't look that pretty anyways. But the good part is that we're able to fetch our data, which is amazing. So now what I want to do is I was really thinking about either adding a functionality for commenting on a post or a functionality for liking a post. I feel like both of them are really cool. I feel like liking is better. Although I know some people right now will be like, no, I really wish you would think that commenting is better. Honestly, both of them are really similar. The only difference is that commenting requires way more UI than liking, but both of them, for adding into a website, it has similar ideas. So I truly believe that if you learn how to add some sort of liking system to your social media website, you'll also know how to add your commenting, because that's at least what happened with me. I learned liking, and then I realized, oh, this is similar to commenting. So now I can do that as well without even spending much time researching. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the functionality for liking other people's posts, which in my opinion is really cool. So to do that, we're going to have to add a button for each post, and that button, when clicked, will add a like to that post. We also need to display how many likes that post has, but we're going to do all of that in the footer of each post, right? So right next to the username, I want to add a button. This button for now is just going to be a plus, but I do think there is a Unicode for the like button. Actually, I'm going to search it right now and be back in a second. Okay, I just found it, and it is this thing over here. If you're not aware, I don't think I mentioned it in this course because it's not React, it's more HTML. But you can get this, like there's a bunch of codes like this one over here. They're called HTML entities, where they represent little symbols or icons that you can just put. So this one represents the emoji for a thumbs up. So now the button has a little thumbs up emoji, as you can see, which looks kind of cool. It's kind of representing when you want to like a post, which is nice. And that's what we really wanted. So now that we have this, we want to add the ability to like that post individually. So how are we going to do that? Well, we have to think about it this way. There's two ways to do this, really. Two ways to do this. One that is a little bit more complicated and one that is more simple. The simple one is very simple. We would just come to the post table and add a new field in each post called likes. And then every time you click on that button, it would give it a like. But there's an issue with that. Issue is that we don't know who liked what, meaning that I could just come over here and give a million likes to the same post and it would just keep increasing. And that's fine for a lot of projects. It is even fine for this project. But like I said, this is supposed to show you guys a little bit more complexity, right? And also, I feel like it would gloss over the fact that we only have one collection in this project when most projects have a bunch of collections, right? Different collections, meaning different tables, meaning different types of data that they're handling. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a liking system in our project that keeps track of who liked what and makes it so that you're only able to like a post once. And also, we can even add the functionality to prohibit someone from liking their own post. And I feel like that's actually pretty cool. It's not that complicated, and it will be a really nice addition to this course. So in order to do that, what we have to do is add a new collection into our Firestore. This collection will be called likes because it's going to represent different likes that occurred in different posts. And we're going to click next. Then it's going to ask for a document ID. Like I said, when we created the post one, we can auto ID it and just use this. We don't need to create our own. If you guys want to, you can do it, but it doesn't really matter. Then we have our little fields, right? So what do we need to know in this document in this collection and what each document needs to represent? Well, first of all, it should represent the ID of the user who liked it. So we're going to call user ID. Now, we need to be very careful with how we name our fields because this can represent which user is this representing, right? Is it the one who created the post or the one who is liking the post? In this case, it is the one who is liking the post. So we can just leave it this way for a moment and just put a random value over here because remember, we're going to delete this anyway. It's just for the first document that we're creating. Then we need to add another field, which is the ID for the post that this user is liking. So we're going to say post ID. And we're going to again put a random ID over here. In my view, this should be enough because what is going to happen is every time you like a post, we're just going to make an addition to this collection. And we're going to add a document with a user ID, with your ID, and the ID of the post that you are liking. And then when we're displaying each post, we can basically just query all the likes with that post ID. And that should be fine. And then whenever we try to like that post, we can check to see if in that post ID, there is a user ID similar equal to yours. And if there is, it won't allow you to like that post. So that's the whole idea, right? Then we're going to click save. And as you can see, we now have our likes collection. So let's start implementing everything we need in this collection. I'm going to delete the first one, just because it is a fake one, as you know. But we're going to come over here to our code, and we're going to add some functionality when you click on this button. So we're going to copy most of the functionality from the create form over here. This part over here, we're going to copy the post ref and the function, just because it's very similar. And we're going to put all of it inside of this component. So instead of saying post-ref, we're going to call this likes-ref because we want to add a new field to the likes collection, not the post collection. And also we need to change this to likes because this is how we called the collection. Then we need to import everything. So I'm going to import collection from Firestore. I want to import DB from Firebase. And if you don't know how I'm automatically importing stuff, I just click on the thing and like command dot, and then it will automatically show this. If it's in Windows, it's just control dot and it should do the same thing. We're also going to import the add doc. And I think that's basically it for everything. The other stuff isn't actually necessary. So we're going to call this function add like. And this should be likes-ref, not post-ref. I'm going to delete all of this because it's not the data that we need. I'm going to delete this as well. So what we have over here is the add doc function. And as you recall, it first takes in a reference to the collection you want to add a document to, and then it takes in the data that you want to add to it. If you recall, we only have two pieces of data that we need to pass. We need to pass a user ID, and we need to pass a post ID. Now the user ID is going to be the user ID for your current user, the current user logged in. And we get that by using this little function over here, useAuthState, or this hook that we learned in this course. And it will give us, if we import it from React Firebase hooks auth, it will basically give us a bunch of information about the current user logged in, including its ID. Now we also need to import the auth variable, which we get it from Firebase config. So I'm just going to say auth over here, and it should automatically import. Then I'm just going to say that the user ID is equal to user dot, not ID, it's UID, just like this. And now we're setting it to the correct value. I'm also going to put a question mark because there's a chance that user is null, and we don't want that case. But it's probably never going to happen because this shouldn't even be displaying if user is null. So I wouldn't worry about that now. Then post ID, where are we going to get that? Well, we're going to get that directly from the post prop that we get from our post list. So we can just say post.id, and that's already what we want. So we're adding the correct information to our document. All we have to do now is just call the addLike function when we click on the button. I'm going to call addLike, and it should be fine. We can now test this out, actually. It's super simple. We're not even requesting any data because everything is already set up for us. So I'm going to click on the button, and let's check to see if this worked. It literally did. As you can see, we already have a document with the post ID and the user ID for the correct information. Now, what are we going to use? Like, what are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to come to our main file over here. No, it's not actually the main file, our post file over here. And when we display our likes, which we're going to do right next to the button, I'm going to create a p tag and say likes equals to, and then we display the likes. We're going to get some data from the collection to put over here. So how are we going to get the amount of entries in the likes collection with the post ID equal to this post? Well, we're going to use something called the query in Firebase. So the query is just a function that we can get from Firestore, just like this. And what it allows us is to specify what we want to get directly from our collection. And we're already kind of doing this when we do collection just like this. But when we get a document from the collection, we're basically just getting everything. But not now. Now we need to specify what documents we want to get, and we use a query for that. So what we want to do is we want to come over here. We're going to say const likes doc, because what we're going to get back is an actual document. And we're going to set it equal to query. And over here, we have to specify first what collection we're trying to get that document from. In this case, it's the likes collection. And then we can pass in some really cool stuff to specify what likes we want to get. Well, we want to get the likes where the post ID is equal to the current post.id, right? Where the post ID field is equal to this. So to do that, there's a function from Firestore called where, and it automatically imported. And this where function is really simple. It takes in three things. First is what field we want to compare. In this case, it's the post ID field. Then it takes in what operation we want to do. there's only a couple operations, but in our case is the equal, because we only want to get where the post ID is equal to this ID. And then we put the data, right? Which in this case is the post.id. And if you look at this, it's very simple to understand. All we're doing is we're making a query in our collection. We're specifying which collection we're talking about, which is the likes one. And we're saying that we only want to get the data where the post ID is equal to the ID of the post we are currently in, right? Because this is inside of a loop and we're only getting the information from that specific post. So now I can use this inside of the getDocs function, which we can just import over here as well, getDocs, and it should allow us to see all the information we want to see. So over here, I'm going to create a function called getLikes, and then inside of it, I'm going to call the getDocs function. So I'm going to say getDocs, just like this, and I want to get all the documents with this specific document. Just like, I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but we're specifying which document we want to get. And then this is going to be an async await function because we need to await for the data. And we're going to get the data by just saying const data is equal to await get docs. So now we're going to console log this just to see what it looks like. Now, if you recall, when we were getting the documents from the other collection, when we're just getting the post list, we had to do all of these things, which we still have to do. So I'm just going to copy all of this just like this so that we can just do this easier. I'm just going to say data.docs, just map through all of it and just get back that data. So what we should see over here in the console log is a list of all the different people or likes that exist for each specific post. So we're probably, since in this case we only have one like, we should only see one thing being console logged. And we are not seeing it yet because we didn't call this function. So I'm going to call a useEffect over here, which is going to be calling this function. So I'm going to say useEffect, and we're going to put the getLikes function, and then never forget to put your empty array so that you only do this when the component is mounting and not when it's updating. So now we're going to save this, and let's see what is console logged. We're going to refresh the page, take a look at our console, and it's a bunch of stuff appears. One of them is this array over here with one element, and in itself, it appears to have exactly the information we want. So this is amazing because it tells us that for this post, there is one element. That's nice because we only want to display the amount of likes. So the length of this array is equal to the amount of likes. Now all the other ones are 0 because they don't have likes, but if I were to come over here and like this one, you would see that if I refresh the page, now it would have an array with one like on this one and an array with one like on this one. You might also notice that it's console logging twice for each of them, and that's because of the whole thing that I explained about the useEffect on the useEffect episode, but it's only happening in once. Like it's console logging twice, it's running twice, but we shouldn't worry about that. And what we have to do now is we have to create a state that is going to represent the amount of likes. The reason why we're creating a state for that is because whenever we like a new post, I want to alter that state to add a new value. And to do that, that's how we do it, right? We have to create a state for that. So I'm going to come over here at the top and I'm going to create a new state. I'm going to set it equal to useState. And the state will be a number, which will start out as null again, because I don't want to display anything unless it's actually being displayed. So I'm going to come over here and call it like, or likes, like amount, and then set like amount, just like this. And then I'm going to basically say that this is a number, because it is a number, but it can also be null if the data hasn't arrived yet. And then we're going to just set or display the like amount over here. But we want to display only if like amount is not null. So only if like amount exists. Because we don't want to display the likes thing when there's nothing. You see, right now it's null, so it's not displaying. But if we didn't add that check, basically this is how it would look like. It would just say likes and nothing, which is a bad user experience, so we don't want to do that. Then we're going to come over here at the top, and we're going to set the like amount to be equal to the length of our data.docs. So I'm going to actually remove this. We only use this to see if our thing was right. But now data.docs should give an array of all the documents. So all we need to know about the documents is its length. So we just have to say docs.length, and that should be fine. But we're not console logging it. We're actually just setting the like amount to be equal to that. And that should be fine as well. You should see that now the posts which got a like have a like, and those which doesn't have a like. Now, one thing we need to do is we need to add a check to see if you already liked that post or not. So the reason for that is because if you do, then this little button should not be adding a new like. Instead, it should probably just unlike it. So what I want to do is, if you've already liked this, I'm going to turn this into a thumbs down, meaning that you can unlike whatever you liked. So we're going to come down here in our code, and we want to check, whenever we have this button, we want to check to see if our current ID is present in that list. So I want to get that list over here. But in order to do something like this, inside of this button over here, right, inside of this button, we need to know if the current user logged in has liked the post, right? But currently our like state only takes in the amount of likes. So this is where we need to rethink how we structured our project. And I'm doing it this way so you guys can see how I would personally structure, like how I approach this the first time I would do something like this. I wouldn't just know how to do everything from the start, right? I would probably start by setting the state as a number, like I just did, but then notice that if I want to add something else, I need to move backwards and restructure everything so that it now fits in with the new feature. And what we need to do is we need to replace this. Instead of being a number, we need this to be actually a list of all the likes that we have in this post. But we can specify what data we want to get back. And the thing that I want to get back is just the actual user ID who liked this, because that's all we want. So we can create an interface over here called likes, or like, just like this. And all it's going to contain is a user ID, which is a string. Now, each like, we're gonna define that over here, but now the state will not be called like amount. It's gonna be called set like, or like. And then this is not gonna be a number. It's gonna be a like array. I know this might sound a little bit confusing, but don't worry, it's gonna make sense. Over here, instead of setting the like amount, we're gonna set the like to be equal to data.docs. And then we're going to do the whole thing that we did before, the mapping. But we need to specify how we want our data to look like. Before, we were specifying it this way. We wanted to get everything from the data and the ID. We don't need the ID, and we don't need everything from the data. All we need is a field called user ID, which is equal to doc.data.user ID. Now, it is giving us an error. I think it's because I didn't say it was a user ID. But basically, we're just setting this like object to be a list of objects containing just one field, the user ID. And that's enough, because now we have two things that we can get from this state. Before we only had one. Before we could only know the amount of likes for this post. Now, not only we know the amount of likes, because all we have to do is say something like like.length, because it's still an array, right? And I also still have to say that that like has to be null. So this still works. It still shows the amount of like. But also we know which users liked this post, which is great, because what we can do is we can create a variable over here. And this variable will be called has user liked. I don't know, I don't like this name, but whatever. Basically, it's a Boolean that is going to determine if the current user liked this post or not. And we're going to set this equal to the like array, and then we're going to try to find in that array an element. So a like, we can't call it like because the array is already called like. Actually, we should call this array likes, not like. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to change it to likes and set likes. And I have to change everything else to that as well. So I'm going to copy this, and then copy this and this. So now it's called likes because it's an array. It makes more sense. And then for each element in that likes array is going to be a like. If you're not familiar with the find function, all you're doing here is you're looping through the array and you're trying to find something where a condition you put over here is satisfied. So the condition we need is we only find elements if the like.userID is equal to the current user ID that we get from the useAuth state. So we'll say user.uid. And if that's true, then this should be true. And if this is true, then we don't want to display this Unicode. We only want to display this Unicode if they never liked. The Unicode that we want to display, or the HTML entity we want to display, it's not a Unicode actually, it's an HTML entity we want to display, is the thumbs down one. And the entity for that one is this over here. So this is what we want to display, not this. It has given us an error because this only exists inside of actual HTML. So I'm going to add a fragment over here just so that this is HTML and not JavaScript. And it should be fine. Now you'll see that for those which I liked, it will have a thumbs down. And for those which I didn't like, will have a thumbs up. Now, hear me out. You might think, okay, I don't know if this is working because this might just be that kind of situation where whichever post has a like, it will show a thumbs down. But no, it is actually checking to see if I was the one who liked. Because if I log out of this, go to login, and then sign in with Google and go with my other account and just go there again, you'll see that the thumbs up is here because I've never liked this. If I like this now, you'll see that if I refresh the page, now that will become a thumbs down, as you can see. Now, it's not happening automatically, which I don't like. We can actually use some optimistic rendering to make that happen automatically without having to refresh. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come to our code over here. And inside of our add-like function, we're going to basically just set the likes array to be the same as before. So we need to have the previous value of likes, just like this. And we're going to set it to be the same as it was before, but now we're adding a new object to it with a user ID equals to the current user. So I'm going to say user.uid. All we're doing is whenever you like a new post, not only it will be sent to the database, but it's also going to update in our own project, in our own UI. Now, it gives us an error because this can be null. So basically, what we have to check here is if, basically, if prev is true, then we do this. If not, then we basically just set it equal to an array with this value over here. I know it looks kind of hacky because all we're doing is we're saying, okay, if prev is not null, then add to the end of the array, meaning that there's an element in the array. That's why it's not null. But if it is null, just set likes to be an array with a single element with the user ID equal to the user.uid. But if you recall, this is giving us an error because it's saying that user ID can't be null, which is true, it can be null. So what we're doing is we're going to come over here and we're going to add a check to say that if we only want to set the likes if the actual user exists, because if not, then we don't want to even get near this. And the error will disappear because user will never be null. So we can even remove this. So now we have this thing over here, right? This one, it has not been liked yet. So now if I click on this, it will be liked and the thumbs will change to down because now we added to the likes array the new value. Now, why this is called optimistic rendering? Because technically this can fail, right? The add doc can fail and the data can, for some reason, not be sent to the likes array. And at the same time, we're just manually changing the UI, which is not good in the case that if the API request fails. So we have to make sure that it doesn't fail by adding a try catch over here. We only want to add the set likes if this try catch is successful. If it doesn't, then for now we can just console log something. I'm going to add an error over here and console.log that error. But now we're just ensuring that this will only work, this will only happen if this is successful. So now that we have this done, I want to add the functionality, which is the last thing we're going to add to this project probably, of unliking something that you've already liked. So technically I've liked this and I can like other stuff as well, as you can see, but I want to be able to unlike what I've liked so far, because if I click on this, I believe it's going to try to like again, and it will send a duplicate user to the database, which is not what we want. So I'm going to come over here, and in the same place where I created an add like function, I want to add a remove like function. So remove like, just like this. This is important because it's going to be the last part of our CRUD operation, which is the delete part. And to do that, we have to call a function called deleteDoc, which is a function that we can get from Firestore. This function, it is called to delete or remove a document from your collection. And to do it, it's very simple. We're just going to say that we want to get the specific document. So we need to make a reference to which document we want to delete. And the document we want to delete is, well, we're going to say const deleteDoc actually. Actually, I'm going to call it like to delete. So we're just specifying which like we want to delete. Set it equal to doc, which is a function from Firestore that we haven't used so far, but we're going to use it right now. This function, it is used to specify a specific document you want to remove. So over here, all we have to pass is first the DB, the database that we're referencing, then the collection that we're referencing, and in this case is the likes collection, and then we have to specify the ID of the thing we want to delete. So what ID are we talking about? Is it the user ID? No. Is it the post ID? No. Then which one are we talking about? Well, it is the ID for the document in this collection, which has the post ID equal to the ID of the post inside of this component, and also the user ID equal to the current user's ID. So to use this doc function over here, we need the ID of the specific document we want to delete. But how are we going to get that? Because like as of right now, the like list that we have over here, first of all, only includes user IDs. And second of all, we don't have that specific like. So we need to get that. And the way we're going to get that is by making a query. So we're going to basically do a query just like we did over here. And we're going to get the specific like we want to delete. So like to delete, just like this. And we want to query the likes ref where the post ID is equal to the post ID, but also where the user ID is equal to, and ID has to be like this, is equal to the user.uid, just like this. So now we have this like to delete thing, which we have to use. Oh, I just realized I named them the exact same thing. I'm just gonna say like to delete query as this one. And then now that we have this query, we're gonna get that specific like by saying const actual like to delete data is equal to await, and then we do get docs. Now it's not get doc because we still have to, when you're querying you're filtering for stuff, you still need to get like a list of things. I know in our case it's just going to be one element because there's only one like that satisfies this condition, but at the same time we still have to do it this way. So we put in the like to query, and we know that this thing will now have one element with the specific like. So over here we say like to delete data, and we say dot docs. Now it is multiple, but we know for a fact it's only going to be one of them. And we say dot ID because that's all we need. And now we are first querying the specific like that we want to delete. We're then getting the data from that like just to get the ID of it and put it inside of this function doc. Because this function, if I just come here and replace this with a deleteDoc function from Firestore, all we have to put is the doc or the like to delete thing over here, and it will delete that specific document. I know that deleting sounds like it looks really more complicated than all the other operations, but you'll get used to it as you write more of this kind of stuff in your projects, which is amazing, right? It's amazing. And since we just did this, we can test it out to see if it works by basically coming over here. I'm going to even remove this for now. I'm going to add it in a second, but we also want to come over here in the button, the on click, and basically say that we only want to add a like if this user has liked before. So we're going to say has user liked ? Then add the like function. And I'm going to even call it this way. But if not, then remove the like function. And I think we can call parentheses this way. Is this the error? Yeah. So this is how we're doing. We're just, if you have liked before, then, oh, it's the opposite. You remove the like. If you haven't liked, then you add the like. If you click on this button. So now if we come to our code, we'll see this over here. Why does it say 110 and 92? I think midway through this, we were accidentally doing stuff. So I'm going to basically just delete all this document by basically just deleting the collection. I'm just going to say likes and I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to edit again by just coming over here, adding likes, then auto-generating an ID. I'm clicking save. We don't even have to add anything. I'm going to delete this document, the original one that comes first. And now let's just start trying to add new documents. Is it adding documents without my knowledge? I don't think so, right? Yeah, I don't think so. So I'm going to click on this button. It's going to like this post. You see the document is here. And now if I refresh the page and I don't know, imagine I'm just chilling and I click on this button, now it should remove the like. We are not seeing the UI changing because, again, we haven't added this functionality yet. We're still going to add it. I commented it out. But if it worked, now that like should have been removed. But the reason why I didn't is because, remember in the previous episode, we set some rules for our Firestore, right? And it basically says that you have to satisfy all this logic over here to be able to delete, update, and write. Right now, I'm going to basically change this. I'm going to say that you can delete if you are authenticated. And if I publish this, come over here, try that again. We should see this being deleted, as you can see. So if I refresh the page, now it should have 0 likes. And if I click on it again, it should have a like now. If I delete it again, it should not have a like, which means it's working. And we can now just add the final stretch, which is basically making that happen automatically by commenting this out. Then basically saying that if there's a user and we just deleted the doc, and we know that it actually worked because it's inside of the try statement. We're going to basically set the likes to be equal to what it was before. But we can only delete a doc or a like if prev is not null, right? Because if there's something already in that list. So we technically don't have to make this check over here. I'm going to even delete this. We don't have to make this check. What we have to do is we just have to set the likes to be equal to prev.filter. So we're going to filter the array, and whenever for each element we're going to get a like, and we want to remove the element where the like.id is equal to the user ID, the ID for the like we just deleted. So since we're going to reuse this twice, we have to we don't have to, but I'm going to make it this way. I'm going to create a variable for that. I'm going to say like ID, set it equal to this thing over here, and then just reuse it twice, here and here. And you might notice immediately that this is giving us an error. And it's given us an error. Now, the reason why it's given us an error is because you can clearly see that like doesn't have an ID field, because our list of likes only has a user ID. But now we need an ID field, which again makes us have to change the structure of our likes or like interface. And I'm doing this way so that you guys can keep seeing how we keep changing back some stuff that we've done so far to adapt to new features. So now each like, we need the ID for that field in the database. So I'm going to say ID is, or I can call it like ID to be more specific, and it's going to be a string. And now over here at the bottom, I can basically say that I want the like.likeID to be equal to the like ID we have over here. Still giving us an error because look at this over here. When we set the likes to be equal to this, we were only adding the user ID, which is what we were doing before. But now we need to add another field called like ID, and we're going to just set it equal to doc.id, which is the ID for that specific doc. Over here, same thing. We're going to say like ID is equal to, and then we need the ID for the new document we're adding. And we can get that by just getting the new document over here set it equal to the add_doc function, and then using that to get the ID, just like this. And we also have to do it for this one over here. Really simple, we just copy this, put it over here, and that should work as well. Now the errors are gone. There's still one error. I guess we can just fix this by removing this question mark and probably just saying something like, if prev is true, like if it's not null, then set the likes to this. Yeah, it seems to have worked. And if I come over here and I like a post, I'm gonna like a different one. I'm gonna like this one. I like this one. It's gonna give us a like, as you can see. Now, if I unlike this one, it should work as well, but it worked, but it didn't update. Oh, it's because I used the filter function wrong, and I apologize for that. Currently, we're just filtering and keeping all the elements that have this ID instead of removing the elements that have this ID. So we have to put a not sign over here when we're trying to delete. And now, if I come over here, I try to like a post, like this one. It will like the post, it will appear over here. If I try to unlike it, it will now be removed and it will be deleted from here. So yeah, we added the like functionality and I think it looks pretty nice, right? Like I can like a bunch of posts. I can refresh the page if I want to and it will still be there. I can unlike some posts and it will just unlike that one, as you can see. And yeah, it's working perfectly. So basically this is it. This is it for this project. I'm not adding any CSS actually, because to be honest, it doesn't look that bad. And I don't know, probably my CSS would look worse than this, but I really enjoy that you guys watched this project. I'm still going to be doing some stuff for this project because I'm going to publish this project and show you guys how to publish this project online in the next episode. And yeah, that's basically it. If you enjoyed this project, leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Stick around for the last episode of this course. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be just deploying this and finishing up this amazing course, which I waited so long to post it, and I'm so happy with how basically it's gone. It's obviously not performing amazing on YouTube, but that doesn't really matter because I know the people watching this really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that I could help, even if it's just a small amount of people. But yeah, that's basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.